The folk club scene was David Graham, who was the granddaddy of all of us, Burchance, John Renbourn, and then they became a duo. And of course, everyone moves to London.
I went there primarily to make money and escape having to work in any way or fashion and to live the life of a bohemian.
The Cousins, as we called it, was actually supposed to be Les Cousins. And, I mean, for years I thought it was owned by a bloke called Les Cousins, you know.
There was a real buzz. Everyone knew everybody else. Bob Dylan played there, Spider John Kerner played there, John Baez played there. In those days, these people weren't famous. And they'd all do 3 sets. In between, they'd have the cannon fodder like me. And it was wonderful.
If you don't know by now.
Going to a John Martyn gig in 1967-68 was much more like a happening from that time. I remember John being in Cousins in the club, sort of playing in this little cellar. He was on stage playing, and the phone rang in the corridor, and he just reached out and picked up the phone, hello, you know, and just carried on this conversation about, you know, with the audience in front of him, and you know, things like that's very spontaneous.
John came in like the young kid. He just brought this kind of boyishness, couldn't give a tuckney toss, played a cheap guitar and made it sound like a, you know, the most expensive instrument you could play, full of vim and vigour and life.
In a foreign city once again,
he was the first white artist I ever signed, and his music was a million miles different from what I was doing in general, because at that time I wasn't even doing anything much in rock and roll or anything. In fact, I was doing nothing in rock and roll. I was just in Jamaican music. But I liked him, and I loved his voice and his playing, so I signed him.
I say London was a mecca, you know, so London conversation, even the word London, you know, swinging London. It was in those days, you know, and it was a big thing. London was like, everyone in Scotland bought it because it had London in the He's gone down south and made it, man. He's got an album. Look at that, pal. That's him. I know him. I went to school with him.
As the mills keep tumbling down.
Certainly those first 2 records, they hadn't been massive, but they hadn't cost a lot. My sort of influences are jazz labels, you know, Blue Note Records, and so it's more important to work with an artist's career, and the records are like milestones in the career. He was, to me, a musician more than more than somebody who was there wanting to be a star.
I think that one of the things also about that time of the Tumbler was that even at that time there were kind of, you know, branches out to other fields, and particularly to jazz. Harold McNair was playing on the Tumbler, and he was just the most amazing jazz flute player.
Yeah, sure. The work of a very innocent young fella learning this thing. You know, I was just getting started in those days.
One for the road, one for the river flowing. All of the one for the four strong winds. Keep it blown away, blown away, blown away. One day down by the seaside I decided to despair. There I knew I couldn't live, and I've been down and fair. One for the road, one for the river flowing.
I don't actually know the name of the album. I don't know what the fuck. I mean, another one out the way. For Cop This, I shagged Michael Tyson.
I would be working a lot more if it wasn't for his foot. That's held up everything, you know. Could be touring anywhere.
Let me use your eye
She was doing a gig in Chelsea, beside the fire station, some college or other anyway. And I did a guest spot.
He was only 19. He was really a beautiful man. Beautiful golden curls and big grin and 6 foot and nicely built. To treat a woman kind. We were introduced and he sort of looked at me. Apparently he said, oh, I saw big eyes, big tits and a big ooter, and I thought, I'd love to fuck that, you know, basically.
Yes! She did have a wonderful pair of tits, that's true. No, she was a lovely, very beautiful girl. Physically a very beautiful girl. And mentally too. Very gentle. Far too gentle for me, I'm afraid.
Sweet honesty. He wasn't a boozer then, as far as I was concerned. In those days, it was all, we were all smoking pot, you know, and like, it scraped me off the ceiling there, you know.
I believe in a minute for every man when he must take notice of the clock and all its hands.
That was a major turning point in my life because I'd never played with a band before, especially not a modern band, modern-ish, I mean. And Yvonne Helm on drums and all those kind of people, and Harvey Brooks on bass, so it just taught me a great deal. And I felt really privileged, and it was like, whew, look at the way these people live, it's different. There's America too, living in Woodstock. Bound to turn a young boy's brain, isn't it? And I mean, whoa, this is cool.
Don't get wet, please keep dry. Think about the people that made you cry.
It was going to be my album, and he was coming along for the ride.
I'm John the Baptist, and this is my friend Salome. And you can bet it's my head she wants, and not my heart only. If you see,
He wasn't content to just be a guitar player playing with me. I started to write some songs and present them to Joe and say, I've got this song. And suddenly it wasn't my album anymore, it was John and Beverly Martyn.
the sun was red and the sky was blue when I went rowing on the road to ruin.
I suppose I could be accused of commandeering, but it wasn't like that, really. It was very much a joint affair. I like to see it that way.
I let him just take over, really. I didn't know how to deal with it, and he was quite a force to be reckoned with.
I mean, I'm not against collaboration at all, but you're almost condescending to someone sometimes, you know. If you're playing with someone who doesn't really quite understand why you're playing and how you're playing, and you feel a touch strangled.
When money's been spent on an album, you're supposed to then do what the record company says, which is, if they choose a single, great, then you promote it. I think we did 2 or 3 gigs to promote Stormbringer and Road to Ruin, that was all. He started to play solo all the time.
Ireland didn't want to continue with the duo. They wanted me, but they didn't want Beverly. And I had, by that time I had my adopted child, Wesley, and also my Vary Dinks was on the way, so I had to make money. And that was the only way I could do it, was, you know, do a solo career, go back to where I started almost, and do